the live stream. And let me turn off the waiting room. And I hope everybody's having a great day here. I think we're live streaming. Bear with me just a moment. Looks like it. Okay, let me record. Okay, yay! Welcome, everybody. I'm so excited to see you all. We are joined today by the amazing Neale Donald Walsch. So thank you, everybody, for joining. You may be here with us live in the Zoom chat. We are streaming this on the Conscious Awakening Network and also recording for the Meditation Conversation podcast. Welcome if you're joining us on YouTube or on the Conscious Awakening Network via the app or online or Amazon Fire or all of the many different ways to access the live stream with the Conscious Awakening Network. I'm your host, Kara Goodwin, host of the Meditation Conversation podcast, the podcast to support your spiritual revolution. And I am so honored today to be joined by Neale Donald Walsch. He has written 39 books on contemporary spirituality and its practical application in everyday life. He has 9 books in his Conversations with God series, with book 1 remaining on the New York Times bestseller list for 134 weeks. His latest book is The God Solution, published in December 2020. And in our last interview, Neale, in episode 185, I went on and on in the introduction about how great you are and that you're this legendary author and how your work has actually been foundational in my own path. It was one of the early, I think the earliest kind of consciousness shift books that I engaged with. It blew my mind. But in that episode, you were very clear that you are just a person and you're not this amazing guy. So I'm going to pick that up now. I can learn. And I'm just going to say, here's this guy, Neale, and he wrote some books and they were excellent. And you've probably read them too. And they probably blew your mind and shifted your consciousness, but no big deal. So I can learn. Is that a better intro?
Yes, thank you. Even though you said I'm excited today to have this amazing person. And I just wanted to start off by saying there's nothing amazing about me. And anyone who knows me will be glad to tell you that. I'm far from amazing. But you know, as Kara just said, I'm just an ordinary human being who had the same experience we're all having. It's just that I actually say it out loud, and most of us keep it to ourselves. But by the way, if you do not agree with everything that Kara says, then you are having a bad defeat. But if you want to avoid a bad defeat and rather have a good win, then you will agree with everything that Kara Goodwin says.
I love that. That's right. See, more wise words. Nobody wants a bad defeat.
No, good win is better than bad defeat.
It's my real name too. Well, it's my married name, but it's the name I've had for a couple of decades now. So
you've been married since you were 12? My gosh.
Patty's agreeing. Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a long time now. Not quite 20 years. I got married in 2004. So next year will be 20. Oh, well, I'm just going to throw you into the deep end if you don't mind. And this is probably going to be easy for you anyway, but can we talk about purpose? And I know that a lot of your teachings are around the spiritual aspect of human life, and that we, identify, a lot of times we identify as being human, but we are these spirits in human form. So what would be, in your opinion, the purpose of this physical experience?
Well, I have a thought about what I was told in my conversations with God. I'd like to help people who are watching us right now to know that you just said about me, you said, Neale, I know that a lot of your teachings are about et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't have any teachings. These are not my teachings, and I wouldn't want anyone to think that these are my teachings. All I have done is to pass along to anyone who might be interested what I was told in my conversations with God. And I'm very clear that we're all having conversations, as I mentioned a moment ago, that we're all having conversations with God all the time. We're simply calling it something else, women's intuition, a sudden insight, an epiphany, a moment of awareness, whatever we want to call it. But I don't want anyone watching this program to think that I'm here to share my teachings, because I have no teachings to share. But I can tell you what I was given to share with others in my conversations with God with regard to purpose of life, that we are in fact spiritual entities, that every one of us is at our basis a spiritual entity. I use the word soul. You can use whatever words feel natural or normal or comfortable to you. But I would say that we are all souls, and that our soul has agreed with itself to move into a physical reality, to come to the earth, or by the way, for that matter, any other place in the physical universe. I think that many of us have visited other locations in the universe and maybe even had lifetimes in other locations, but we're having this lifetime on this particular planet. But it's the same reason that we would incarnate anywhere in the cosmos. And the reason for our incarnation is to place us into a contextual field that allows us to experience who we really are. Because in the system that's been set up in life itself, it is necessary for us to have a contrasting element to who we really are in order for us to experience who we really are. If I could put this in simple terms, Kara, let's just pretend, metaphorically speaking, that I am the light. And by the way, I'm not making that statement, I'm not the light, so don't go there, anybody, but as a metaphor. If I said I am the light, it's one thing to know that about myself, or really frankly, to know anything about myself, to know that I'm compassionate, or that I'm caring, or that I'm loving, or that I'm forgiving, or kind, or generous, or whatever it is, humorous, whatever I want to know about myself. It's easy for me to know those things about myself, but for me to express them in the world in a way that allows me to experience myself, its exact opposite must exist. And to go back to my metaphor, if I want to say that I am the light, I can't experience myself being the light. I can know myself as the light, but I can't experience myself being the light unless there is the darkness. In the absence of the darkness, the light cannot be experienced or expressed. Therefore, we know that when the opposite of who we are appears, our opportunity is, in fact, to bless it, to thank it for demonstrating itself, for bringing itself to our awareness, that we might know through the demonstration of who we are, our true identity. And that's why all the great masters, I like to quote a guy who lived a couple of thousand years ago, but there are many, many, many masters who've said in one way or another, each in their own way, they have said, raise not your fist to heaven and curse the darkness not, but be a light unto the darkness, that you might know who you really are, and that all those whose life you touch might know who they really are as well. And so our purpose in physicalizing, if I could coin a word, our purpose in allowing ourselves to experience the physical reality, is to give ourselves an opportunity to express the wonder, the glory, the happiness, the joy, the magnificence of who we really are. And so we come not only to experience that, but to expand it, to make it even larger, a larger and larger version of ourselves. Or if I could use a common word for that experience, to evolve. So to put the whole explanation in one sentence, I would say that we come to the world of the physical in order to evolve who we really are and become a grander and grander version of our true self. You know, I could have made all that up. I didn't. It was given to me to share. But even if I did make it all up, here's what I've discovered. Living it, whether it's true or not, has changed my life. And it turns out, has touched the lives of millions of other people. It never would have occurred to me that when I produced a book called Conversations with God, that it would be read by 15 million people in 37 languages. It simply would not have occurred to me. But not bragging, just saying that's what happened. And these are the kinds of things that occur in the lives of people who set themselves on the path of demonstrating who they really are. But Kara, it's not going to be easy because it's going to invite us. I was almost going to say require us, but nothing really is required of us. But it will invite us to do some extraordinary things. Like, for instance, bless your enemies and pray for those who persecute you and do good to those who would do you evil. This notion of why we're here is going to invite us to do some extraordinary things. You know, when a man slaps you on the right cheek, turn and offer him your left. When someone asks you for your coat, offer your shirt as well. And when someone demands that you walk 1 mile with him, go with him 20. And then see what happens in your life. See how life responds to you and how you begin to experience yourself, express your true identity. Just a thought in answer to your question. Just a thought. I could be wrong, of course, about all of this. I don't think so.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for that. And you talking about the being the light and that duality, that dual nature of this physical world. It makes me think of your children's book, Little Soul in the Sun.
Yes.
And you do also in Conversations with God talk a lot about the dual nature of things. That's really an illusion, good and bad and right and wrong. And all of that is their tools for us to, just as you talked about. I wonder if there's no actual bad, how do you have advice about how to know what the best action is for us? Like, how can we use that information in the best way without kind of feeling like everything's meaningless?
Well, of course, everything is meaningless. That's one of the most important things for us to understand, that as I was told in Conversations with God, Kara, Neale, nothing has any meaning save the meaning you give it. That's the greatest gift from the greatest giver of gifts. The greatest gift from God is that nothing has any meaning inherently. Things mean what we say they mean. Wow. That gives us the power to decide it and then to express and to experience who we really are. Because, and by the way, these are just a pile of words that I spew out here and say to people. I've had the experience of that. I've been in a room with 3 different people, myself being one of them, me and 2 other people. All 3 of us have had the same encounter with life, but all 3 of us had 3 entirely different experiences of it. Somebody thought the joke was funny, hilarious. Somebody thought the joke was bad, not funny at all. And someone actually thought the joke was cruel and couldn't believe that the person told that joke. The same joke heard by all 3 people. So guess what? In fact, life is meaningless. And I want you all to put that on your bathroom mirror. Get a magic marker or a felt tip pen and write on your bathroom mirror, life is meaningless. Nothing has any meaning save the meaning I give it. Then be careful about the meaning that you give to certain events. Somebody not calling you, somebody snubbing you, somebody saying this, somebody being nice to you, somebody making love with you, somebody failing to make love with you, somebody cheating you, somebody giving you more money than you should get. You know, have you ever been to the grocery store and gotten more change than you should have gotten? And realize that they put a 20 in instead of a 10? And you stop yourself and you say, oh excuse me, ma'am, I think I gave you $10 too much. All of you have had that experience or that kind of experience. All of you have had moments in your life when you said, whoa, wait a minute. I'm not going to let this one pass me by. This is not who I am. And that's really what we're talking about here. And when you have those kinds of experiences repeatedly and then expand your expression of self in those moments, then you experience the glory and the wonder of your own evolution. And in your last moments on this planet, in this particular lifetime, you put your head, if you're lucky enough to die in that way, back on the pillow, and you say, no regrets. No regrets. I didn't say no sadnesses. I didn't say no moments of unhappiness, but I did say no regrets. Because I met the moment as it was presenting itself in a way that allowed me to know who I really am. Wow. If somebody knows a better way to live, I'm all ears.
I love that. Thank you. So, that there's so much there that kind of makes this next question kind of moot. So we'll do our best, but there are a lot of people who are suffering on this planet. And I wonder about your thoughts around suffering and if there are any antidotes to that, in addition to just kind of taking everything in stride, as you mentioned. But does anything come to mind in terms of antidotes to suffering?
Tara, what I'm going to say may sound, if we're not careful, because nothing has any meaning save the meaning you give it, folks. So you can give whatever meaning you want to give to what I'm going to say. But some of you might say, like the guy who told a bad joke, some of you might say that what I'm going to share with you now is a bit cruel. But I have to tell you what I was told. Suffering is unnecessary under any circumstance or condition. Suffering is merely our decision that what is happening should not be happening. But if we agree that what is happening is placed in our life perfectly as an opportunity for us to announce and declare, to express and fulfill, to become and to experience, here we go again, who we really are, then we don't disagree with what's happening. And conversation has also told us, Neale, what you resist persists. Therefore, resist not, resist nothing, but simply allow what's occurring to occur and allow yourself to know that it can be used in ways that benefit your purpose in coming to the physical reality. So now I did not say, by the way, there's no such thing as pain. Please don't misunderstand. I didn't say there's no such thing as pain, but pain and suffering are two entirely different things. I've seen a person in incredible pain, I mean, real physical pain, and smiling about it because I was at the birth of my triplets. And I watched their mother smiling through the pain because she understood that the pain was birthing new life. Having been there at a moment such as that, which is a glorious moment to be at the birth of anything, a cat, a kitten, a dog, to say nothing of your own children, but to be at the birth of your own children is glorious because it brings forward the metaphor that pain produces the birthing of new life. And when we see that metaphor in every moment of pain, then we can receive the pain in a way that causes us to experience the painfulness without the suffering. You know what, Kara, this is interesting for me to talk about this because I realize that what I'm essentially saying is that sadness and happiness can exist simultaneously in the same moment. Again, that's another thing that people might say, wow, this guy's really a strange man saying those things. But I want to share with you that my experience has been that sadness and happiness can be experienced simultaneously at precisely the same moment. By the way, if you don't think I'm right about that, ask any man who has walked his daughter down the aisle to marry her beloved. I've had that experience. And I know that I felt so sad that I would no longer be, the number one guy in her life. And so happy that she had found someone to be the number one guy in her life. Sadness and happiness, we've all experienced those tears of sadness and happiness simultaneously. That's the answer to the question of suffering. When we shed tears of happiness at the opportunity that the suffering has given us, then it no longer feels like suffering. It can still feel painful, but we embrace it as simply another, dare I say it, gift of life. And I want to go further than that to say even our own death can be experienced that way. And that is the way spiritual masters have experienced their own death. I could, of course, be wrong about all of this. I don't think so.
Wow. That's so true. The dual nature of, I hadn't really thought about the ability to experience sadness and happiness in exactly the same moment. That's really powerful as well. Well, so we've talked about your own.
Excuse me for interrupting. I'm sorry, but I wanted to make that last point really vivid for people. I've had not only that experience walking my daughter down the aisle, I've had that experience watching my mother die, feeling incredibly sad, obviously, that she would no longer be with me, and feeling incredibly happy, knowing where she was going and knowing that she knew where she was going. You know what the priest said when he came out of the room? He went into the hospital room in the emergency. He was in the emergency ward, and he came out to give my mother the last rites of the Catholic Church. And he was pale as a ghost. And we all said, the whole family was there, of course. We all said, Father, is everything okay? Did she pass on while you were there? Well, what happened? He said, no, Oh, she didn't pass when I was there. She said, your mother must be some kind of a saint. I said, why would you say that? The priest looked at me and he said, she was comforting.
Oh, wow.
She was saying, Father, don't be nervous. You can't do this in the wrong way. It'll be fine. I know exactly where I'm going. He said she was comforting me. So I've had the feeling of incredible sadness and incredible happiness at the same moment the day my mother went home.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's so powerful. Well, you've talked about, you've referred many times to these conversations and that they are, you wrote them down, but you know that people are having these types of conversations. Each individual is having it. Do you have advice on how people can kind of nurture that relationship with God, or if they don't feel like they're having conversations or they feel very one-sided, do you have any advice for people on to how to have their own conversations with God?
Yeah, I've actually written a book about it, and it'll be coming out on the 14th of November of 2023.
Oh,
The book is
wow.
called God Talk. And the book talks about how we can all have our own conversation with God if we choose to do so. Again, to repeat what I said earlier, Kara, we all already are having our own conversations with God. We're simply calling it something else. But there's not a person I've ever met who has not had a moment of enormous insight or sudden clarity about something, or an epiphany, if you please, or in fact, as I said earlier, a moment of women's intuition, whatever you want to call it, where we just seem to know more than we have a right to know based on our own experience. Something just comes to us and all of a sudden, we know that as well. Now, how to develop that? First, we have to agree that there is a source of enormous wisdom and clarity in the universe. Do you know 8 out of 10 people, surveys have been taken on this planet by anthropologists in recent years. They've gone to all the nations of the earth, not just 1 or 2 places, but they were careful to go to just about every location there is. And they asked people on the street one question, a 1-question survey. Do you believe in a higher power? And 85% of the people said yes. I can't describe it. I'm not sure I know what it is. I don't know how to define it. I don't know what it wants, if anything. I don't know what it does, if anything, if it doesn't get what it wants. But I do think there's more going on here than meets the eye. So the first step, to answer your question directly, is for us to acknowledge there's more going on here than meets the eye. There probably is some sort of higher power. Or as my friend Bill said, well, he didn't say it directly, but he put it in his play called Hamlet. And he had his character. He had his character Hamlet say this: there are more things in heaven and earth ratio than are dreamt of in your philosophy. And there are. So that's step number 1. Step number 2 is to acknowledge that God is communicating with human beings all the time. And we have evidence of that. Hundreds and hundreds, I would say thousands of testimonies from people from times in the ancient the world to the modern world. People are telling us right and left, yes, I was given this information from another source, a source outside of myself. I'm going to call the source God. Step number 3, we have to acknowledge that we are worthy, because that's where the big leap occurs. Okay, God talks to people, I get it. And we will all agree that, millions of people, not all of us, but multi-millions of people agree that God talked to Moses, that God talked to Jesus, that God talked to Muhammad, bless his holy name, that God talked to, Buddha, that God talked to Catherine of Genoa, that God talked to the Blessed Mother Mary, that God talked to Teresa of Avila, that God has talked to men and women through the ages. We all agree that God apparently has communicated. In fact, Catholics say that God continues to talk to the Pope, and that when the Pope speaks of things having to do with faith, he speaks without error. He cannot make a mistake. So we all agree, apparently, and most of us agree that God does talk, but do we agree that we are worthy for God to talk to us? That's where the leap of faith comes in. Because God will talk to all of you, even Kara. That was supposed to bring a small smile to your lips.
Oh, even I thought you were about to say, even Kara,
no,
somebody.
God will talk
yes,
to everybody.
even me. Oh,
even
that's
Kara.
wonderful. Yes.
So apparently that means that we're all worthy.
Yeah, right.
Because
I'm like the bottom of the barrel, I guess. Like if he's even talking to Kara, then everybody else is
obviously
definitely okay.
Everybody else is included. So we have to really kind of embrace our worthiness to be spoken to by God. Step number 4, having embraced that, is to not dismiss the information that's coming to us from an apparently separate source. To not simply, call it, it's just my imagination, or it's not really real, or it didn't really happen, or I'm making it all up, or in some way dismiss these bolts of lightning that strike us and bring us insight and awareness and understanding. And by the way, they're not always just statements of huge truth. They're often just feelings. What should I be doing next? How do I respond to what's happening right now? And we suddenly move into a feeling that sponsors an action that allows us to experience ourselves at the next level of our own magnificence. So that 4th step is to not dismiss the messages when they come to us in the form of words or feelings or understandings or levels of awareness or sudden expansions of our consciousness, or for that matter, that come to us by sometimes unusual avenues, like a podcast that we just happen by coincidence to be watching. And then finally, the 5th step is to not dismiss what we've heard by giving it no attention, but to do what it is that what we've just been given invites us to do or to be. That is, don't put it on a shelf for when I have time later, or I'll think about this tomorrow, or to somehow or another set it aside, but to act on what you've been given right here, right now. If you do that every day of your life, I promise you, in 60 days, you'll begin to feel connected. Neale may want to call it God, maybe I'll call it life, the energy, whatever word I want to use, but I'm connected to something larger than myself. And I can call on that aspect of life to serve me in my movement through this process that I call life itself. That's my thought about it. And that's how I would answer your question.
Thank you. I love it. It's like I even said in the intro, it's so practical and applicable. And I mean, I'm very familiar with your work, so I'm not surprised by this, but I wonder if you want to talk about it. There's nothing in that in terms of worship or things that we may feel through upbringing would be necessary to have that connection with God. I wonder what you might have to say about worship, and because that can be and something that might be important for people in their spiritual understanding, is that there's a right way to do that and the necessity of it. Do you think that there is a right way? Is it even necessary? What are your thoughts there?
Well, my thoughts are irrelevant But what God said to me might have some value. I was told directly in my conversations with God. And you know what? I got to stop myself because when I talk that way, some people think I'm being arrogant, and I don't mean for that to sound arrogant when I talk about my own conversations with God. Actually, I'm far from feeling arrogant about it. I'm feeling very humbled by the fact that we are all having conversations with God. But I'm humbled by the fact that I was able to recognize, that is to recognize, that is to know again, to be cognizant once more of what's actually happening. And I am receiving this information from that highest source in the universe, the higher power that I happen to call God. So what I was told and what I have come to understand because of what I was told by God is that God doesn't need anything. God doesn't require anything. God doesn't demand anything or command anything. For the simple reason that as I said, God doesn't need anything. God is the highest power in the universe. It is the name that some people give to the higher power. I want to say the highest power. So what could the highest power need? What do you need from the ant that's crawling across the kitchen counter in your house? What do you need the ant to do? To bow down to you and worship you? Or maybe you just help it outside and say, sweetheart, you shouldn't be in the house, you should be outside. And maybe you put a little piece of paper where you allow the ant to crawl on your hand. You take the ant outside, blow it off, allow it to find its way home. So God does not need our worship. And God has allowed me to know that religions that have declared that not only does God need our worship, but that we must worship God in a particular way. Because even if we worship God but do it in the wrong way, we're still going to hell. That a person who believes in a higher power, honors the higher power, worships the higher power, prays to the higher power, accepts the higher power in their life, but simply doesn't do it in the right way, is going to hell? That God says, no, you don't understand. You don't understand. Either you do it one way, my way, or I will punish you with eternal damnation for the rest of your eternal life. You will suffer unbelievable torture in the fires of hell because you were a Buddhist or a Muslim or a Jew or a Hindu or whatever. You didn't belong to the right religion. The God of my understanding said to me, Neale, sweetheart, a Jew is as good as a Christian. A Christian is as good as a Muslim. A Muslim is as good as a Baptist. A Baptist is as good as a Hindu. A Hindu is as good as a Mormon. No, not Mormon. No, Mormon. Mormons are absolutely going to hell. But what am I saying? What's the matter with me? And an atheist is as good as all of the above. If you've ever held a newborn baby in your hands and in your arms, and I have, I've done it on 9 occasions with my 9 children. If you've ever held a newborn baby in your hands, ask yourself, what did I require or expect or demand from this wondrous expression of life? Do I need it to worship me? And of course, the answer is no, I need nothing. I need nothing from it. I simply want to love it. I simply want to give it all the love I have in my body, all the love I have in my heart, all the love I have in my mind. I simply want to give it all the love I have to give. And I need nothing in return from this delicious, beautiful, precious child. That is, again, to use a metaphor, our relationship with God. God holds us in her hands. And he says, trust me, I need nothing. But you might feel good if you were open to receiving my love. I could have misunderstood all of that. I think so.
Well, when you were talking about being sent to hell because you didn't practice the right religion or so forth, I wondered if you wanted to expand. Do you think that there are, or in your conversations, let me stop myself from saying it that way. In your conversations, has insight been given from God about hell?
Yes. Yeah, God said to me, Neale, there's no such place as hell.
I was waiting for you to say only Kara is going to hell. just her, it's her own place. Patty like that.
Patty is applauding. When you get Patty's applause, you realize you've really hit on a huge truth. No, God said to me, Neale, who would have created hell? Why would I create a place that you call hell or Hades or whatever you want to call it, a place of eternal suffering? Why? What would be my reason for doing that? Since God cannot be hurt, damaged, injured, frustrated, angered, annoyed in any way. So why would I create a place of suffering, to say nothing of eternal suffering, for something that you might have done during this little smidgen of eternity that you call this particular lifetime? You know, in proportional dynamics, it would be like punishing someone for 1,000 years for something that they did for 30 seconds. To use proportional dynamics, our lifetime in this body versus eternity is like 30 seconds against 1,000 years. And we call that celestial justice. God says, oh, no, you made that mistake in your 30 seconds of being alive. So we're going to punish you for 1,000 years. You'll be sorry. I promise you, you'll be sorry that you didn't do what I demanded. But you know, in the book, The God Solution, it is stated that most of the world's human-made problems with each other, the difficulties that we have getting along with people on the planet, would disappear overnight if we suddenly decided to redefine God, to define God as what God really is, pure love. The kind of love that requires nothing in return, that even hopes for nothing in return, that needs nothing in return. Kara, we can't even love the person on the pillow next to us until we can. Until one day we wake up next to that person on the pillow next to us. And we realize, I need and require nothing from this person. I just want to love this person completely, totally, absolutely, no matter what. Yes, even Kara.
That's very generous. Oh, that's beautiful. Well,
And you know what? One last statement
please.
on that point. When we can say that to ourselves in the mirror, I'm having fun and just jostling around and having a good-natured time with you, Karen, but truly, when we can say it to ourselves without laughing, when we can say to ourselves, God sees me as perfect, just the way I am, mistakes and all, misunderstandings and all. I've made some mistakes in my life. There was that time back in 1947, I recall, and one or two other things that I've done over the past 80 years of my life. But in my 80 years, I think I've come to understand that God embraces and accepts me just the way I am, mistakes and all. And that's why I want my family, and they all know it, I've all told them, to put 4 words on my gravestone. My wife has promised me that if I go before her, she'll make sure those words are on my gravestone. And my children as well have agreed. There will be 4 words on my gravestone.
And what are those?
Now that was fun.
I love that. That is great. Oh, well, I wonder, as we kind of start to wrap up here, if you could give listeners one thing to remember in terms of their spiritual development, is there anything that comes to mind?
Oh, sure, absolutely. It's the single most important message that I received in conversations with God. I didn't, hone in on that. I didn't really separate that out until I had to. But a few years ago, now I guess many years ago, Matt Lauer asked me on the Today Show, which is telecast around the world by I think NBC. And Matt said to me, he had me on as a guest, on the show, and he said, "Neale, you claim to have talked to God." So he said, "Fair enough. If that's what you say your experience is, what's God's most important message to the world?" And I thought, oh boy, talk about putting me under pressure. But the pressure wasn't good enough. So then Matt added, "We have about just 30 seconds left. Can you put it in one quick paragraph?" I said, yeah. And then it came to me. I looked at the camera and I said, God's message to the world in one sentence. Forget about one paragraph. You've got me all wrong. Kara, when I went home, I thought about that deeply. And I scanned through the pages of the Conversations of the God books. And then I found what I consider to be the single most important sentence in those 3,000 pages of dialogue. I asked God, what does it take to make life work? What is it that I don't understand? Obviously, there's something I don't understand here, the understanding of which would change everything. What is it? God said, sweetheart, it's so simple. You think your life is about you, and your life has nothing to do with you. Your life is about everyone whose life you touch and the way in which you touch it. But when you understand that that is what your life is about, you will see that, in fact, in the largest sense, your life is about you, because the way you touch others is the way you touch yourself. What you do for another, you do for yourself. And what you fail to do for another, you fail to do for yourself, for a very good and simple reason. There's only one of us. I know it looks as if there's more than one of us, because we look different to each other. The fingers on your hand look different. They function differently. They have different purposes and different appearances. So they are individual, but not separate from your hand itself. Nor is your hand separate from your body. You are therefore all fingers on the hands of God. Hold that truth. I could, of course, be wrong about that.
That's beautiful. And I love looking at it that way of the important thing is it's not about us. It's about what we're doing with this opportunity to be human and to affect and help others. That's profound. I love that. So it sounds like we have a book to look forward to in November. You said you have a book coming up.
Yes, it's called God Talk.
God
And
Talk.
then in March or April of 2022, my last book, which has now been finished, it's written, and I've sent it off to the publishers as well. That book is called Putting Death to Death. And it's about bringing the idea that we die to an end and changing our thought about what happens in our final moments in this particular body and what impact that has on our life while we are in this particular body. And then I'll be done.
That'll be 41 books, right?
Yes, ma'am. Who's counting?
I just did some quick math in my head. I counted.
Well, I knew I could count on you.
Nothing gets past me. Oh, well, I can't wait for those. So God Talk is in November, and when is Putting Death to Death coming out?
In the spring of 2024.
Okay. Wow. Well, thank you so much, Neale. This has just been so wonderful. The conversation was wonderful, but just I feel so great. I feel like I've just had this big cleansing or something. So really, really beautiful. I really thank you for your time, for being here today.
It was sweet and lovely and generous of you to allow me to share this time with you and with those who will be joining you in watching this program. So thank you. Thank you, Kara. I've enjoyed it immensely, and I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody who has joined. And I look forward to the next time. Maybe you can come on and talk about God Talk in November or leading up to it.
Only if Tom will let me, because I've been wanting to shoot. But if Tom gives me a thumbs up, then I'll come back on the program. Oh. Oh my gosh, Todd gave me 2 thumbs up.
Oh, wow. All right. There we go. Thank you.
I will definitely be here then for the next time.
Oh, wonderful. Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a beautiful weekend ahead. Many blessings to everybody.